They assumed letting me go would close the chapter. They were mistaken. My name is Cameron Blake, and the events in that boardroom just 3 days ago overturned everything. To grasp how a 25-year veteran faced public humiliation and then reversed the tide against a Fortune 500 CEO, you need to understand the silver pen in my pocket and the call I received 72 hours before. It all started the moment plans unraveled. Red tulips rested in my hand as I lingered outside the conference room. A simple gesture, I reassured myself, a bouquet to welcome Adrienne Cross, the new CEO. 25 years at Meridian Corporation had instilled one lesson: respect outweighed titles. I intended her first morning to feel like joining a family, not a firm. Yet the atmosphere shifted the second I entered. Adrienne offered no smile. She ignored the flowers. Instead, she adjusted her jacket and pronounced with a chilling precision, "Cameron Blake, your tenure ends today." My mind stalled. At the table, two newly promoted vice presidents sat rigid, pens ready, as if anticipating an argument. I searched Adrienne's face for a hint of jest, some signal that this was absurd humor. There was none. She slid a manila envelope across the gleaming wood, eyes flat, already dismissing me. My mind refused to process it. 25 years of late-night problem-solving, crisis rescues, audits navigated, all reduced to a single sharp moment. No acknowledgement, no gratitude, merely a clean, surgical cut. The humiliation deepened when she leaned forward, voice clear for the entire room. "This," she said, tapping the envelope with a polished finger, "marks the start of our cultural reform. Meridian must shed its old guard, and Cameron's exit signals transformation." Murmurs spread through the room. Every gaze felt like pity, not respect. My tulips drooped, suddenly absurd in my grip. I set them aside, the scent heavy in the stale air. If you appreciate tales of corporate underdogs who defy defeat, and the quiet justice that comes when experience confronts arrogance, hit like and subscribe immediately. Daily stories unfold that rival the last. I reached for the envelope. My fingers brushed the silver pen I always carried, the gift on my 25th anniversary. My name, etched faintly, glimmered under fluorescent light. Clutching it anchored me against the wave of embarrassment. Yet Adrienne was unaware. None in that room knew. 2 days prior, I had signed documents making me the majority owner of the company she believed she commanded. Adrienne stood tall, convinced she staged a spectacle. She had no inkling this scene would be remembered not as her triumph, but as the spark. 2 days before humiliation, my phone rang late on a silent Sunday. I nearly ignored it, absorbed in a book to drown the anxiety of a new CEO's rumors. Yet the name on the screen stopped me: Theodore Hartwell. Theodore was more than Meridian Corporation's founder. For many, he embodied the company itself. Though retired, weary of investor battles, his legacy lingered in marble halls. When Theodore called, you answered. "Cameron." His tone was precise and deliberate, the voice of a man sparing with words. "I must see you." Minutes later, I sat in his oak-lined study, scents of old leather and tobacco thick in the air, papers stacked neatly before him. Theodore's gaze retained the sharpness I remembered from crisis years, always seeming 10 steps ahead. He slid the documents forward. "It's time the company's future rests with someone deserving." I blinked, uncertain I heard correctly. "Theodore, you mean?" "Yes," he interrupted, reclining. "I am transferring my remaining 42% to you." The words sank slowly. Decades spent preserving the company, never imagining ownership even partially. My pulse quickened as I weighed options: salvation, or the most cunning corporate snare ever devised. Theodore opened a drawer and retrieved a silver pen. Held ceremoniously, he placed it in my palm. "This was mine at Meridian's inception," he said. "More than a pen, it symbolizes trust. By signing, Cameron, you're no longer merely an employee. You become the custodian of everything this company represents." I felt the weight in my hand. My name would be etched into the foundation, not as caretaker, but as owner. I asked softly. "Because," Theodore replied, his voice calm yet deliberate, "I've observed the board circling like predators. I know who serves Meridian and who serves only themselves. You've given more than anyone else, often to your own detriment, and that loyalty is something I trust." My throat tightened. The final pieces of a plan clicked into place. Theodore had been right. Time reveals the true nature of people. Yet as I signed my name, the silver pen sliding smoothly across the paper, his eyes sharpened. One more thing, he said. We'll keep this quiet for now. I want to see who exposes themselves when they think you hold no authority. Their arrogance will betray them. And when the moment arrives, you won't simply defend yourself. You will shape the company's destiny. That was the instant I realized this wasn't merely about possession. It was about witnessing who people truly were when they believed no one was watching. And what I discovered in the following 48 hours would upend everything. 2 days later, Adrienne Cross entered Meridian, believing she controlled the kingdom. She had no notion that the silver signature had already marked her as the intruder. I returned to my office the morning after her proclamation, carrying an empty box instead of tulips. The corridor seemed longer, silence pressing in from every corner. Conversations paused as I walked by. Not from spite, but from that awkward sorrow that comes when people recognize injustice, yet are powerless to intervene. Inside my office, blinds partially closed, slivers of light stretched across the familiar desk where I had spent decades. I placed the box down and began packing my belongings. Framed photos of triumphant projects, battered binders of reports that had safeguarded millions, the chipped coffee mug, cherished from countless overnight shifts, a small bronze paperweight, a gift from Portland dock workers after I helped them through the 2018 strike, the leather portfolio worn from journeys across 3 continents. Through glass walls, glimpses of colleagues. Some averted their gaze, others did not bother hiding sorrow. I recognized it, pity tinged with helplessness. The same look dock workers bore when a shipment failed inspection, knowing nothing could reverse the delay. As I folded a jacket that had hung on my chair for years, memories surged. Nights alone in airport terminals, slouched in plastic chairs awaiting customs. Dawn phone calls rerouting trucks after strikes. And the memory that still ached most, my father's funeral. I recalled vividly, standing in the operations war room, walls covered in maps and red markers. A blizzard had shut shipping lanes, threatening a multi-million-dollar delivery. I stayed, coordinating logistics like a general, convincing myself saving the company justified missing the funeral. I never forgave myself for that, yet carried it silently, a scar invisible to all but me. Looking at faces outside my office, I wondered if anyone truly understood the cost. The boardroom could erase me with a letter, yet my sacrifices were etched permanently. Strangely, that thought carried a quiet pride. My name might not adorn the building, but its foundation bore pieces of my life. Sliding the last folder into the box, I paused. My phone buzzed. A message from Daniel Morrison, one of the longest-serving supply chain managers, flashed on screen. A man who had faced every storm by my side. His words were simple. No one here has forgotten you, Cameron. Not now. Not ever. A swell of quiet pride softened the sting of humiliation. Nostalgia wrapped the moment like a bittersweet cloak. I wasn't leaving empty-handed. I was leaving with proof that my sacrifices were seen, remembered, and honored by those who mattered. But the next events would show that sometimes the people who value you most aren't in boardrooms dictating strategy. Often they're beside you, having witnessed your resolve when stakes were highest. By Thursday morning, Meridian echoed with a new cadence, colder and sharper. I wasn't in the executive conference room, yet news traveled swiftly through corporate halls. Adrienne Cross convened her first full meeting with senior leadership, aiming to make her presence felt. I later learned from a colleague that she entered as if she owned not just the company, but every person around the elongated glass table. Courtesy wasted, she began immediately. "We are beyond sentiment," she declared, pacing deliberately, voice cutting through hesitation. "This company has carried obsolete structures far too long, even second-hand," the phrase stung. Obsolete structures. That was me. Her veiled dismissal of 25 years of dedication reduced to a mere cog in her gleaming new blueprint. She didn't merely disregard my efforts. She belittled every late night, every crisis I'd managed, every ounce of loyalty I'd invested to keep Meridian alive. My chest tightened, anger flickering to life like a long-smothered fire. I could accept being replaced, but being erased, that was contempt I could never forgive. Adrienne pressed onward, arrogance swelling in her tone. "We will go further," she announced. "Departments weighed down by sentiment will be restructured. Risk management, compliance, logistics, they will be rebuilt from scratch. Devotion to outdated methods is no longer tolerated. Her words cut sharply, yet the deeper wound came from the room itself, the silence of those who knew better but chose safety over dissent. Then fate intervened unexpectedly. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from a young analyst I had mentored years before. He had been present in the meeting, notebook open, quietly recording on his device. Attached was an audio file. "Cameron," it read, "you should hear this. They shouldn't get away with it." I pressed play. Adrienne's voice filled my apartment, dripping with scorn. "Old infrastructure," she sneered. "Relics like Cameron are anchors holding us back." Her words were clear, damning, impossible to reinterpret as anything but contempt. I gripped the phone tighter. Anger surged, but alongside it came a cold, deliberate focus. This wasn't mere humiliation anymore. It was evidence. Adrienne had handed me the weapon I might one day wield, a blade forged from her own arrogance. For the first time since being dismissed, I allowed a thin smile. She thought she had silenced me. Instead, she had delivered her own words, and words have a way of echoing far longer than authority. What Adrienne did not know was that while she burned bridges and made enemies, the man she insulted now held the keys to her realm. Friday arrived heavy with expectation. The board of directors gathered in the executive suite, a space meant to intimidate. Polished mahogany stretched nearly 20 feet, floor-to-ceiling windows framed downtown Portland like a corporate tableau, leather chairs aligned with military precision. At the far end of the table sat a chair unlike any other. A simple placard rested before it, "Reserved, majority shareholder." Subtle glances flickered across the room. Some directors masked curiosity with sips of coffee. Others leaned in, whispering speculation. The title carried weight. A new majority shareholder could tilt every vote, reshape the company's path with a single decision. Yet the chair remained empty. Adrienne Cross, standing at the head of the table, noticed the glances, but spun the silence into her narrative. With a confident smirk, she tapped her notes. "You'll be pleased to know the new investor fully supports my vision for reform. Their absence today is merely procedural. Consider it silent approval of the changes we're implementing." Her words were meant to reassure, yet unease lingered. Directors exchanged measured looks, weighing caution against curiosity. Investors often worked from the shadows, but deliberately reserving a chair with a nameplate was unprecedented. It implied imminent presence, someone who would eventually claim it. I wasn't there yet. I waited just beyond frosted glass doors, fingers brushing the silver pen Theodore had given me when signing the papers. Its weight anchored me, a reminder of the choice I had made 2 days earlier. My dismissal still stung, but within that room the stage was set for something far greater than humiliation. I drew a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and readied myself. It was time to demonstrate who truly held authority. For now, restraint was essential. Every instinct urged me to storm the room, strip Adrienne's arrogance bare. But patience was the deadliest weapon I had learned to wield. Inside, Adrienne continued, gesturing toward slides filled with projections and charts. Her voice carried certainty, the confidence of someone convinced of dominance. "This company will no longer cling to outdated systems," she declared. "We are leaner, sharper, faster." Through frosted glass, I traced shifting silhouettes, heard voices rise and fall in the cadence of corporate theater. Adrienne's confident voice dominated, completely oblivious that each word sealed her own fate. Yet even as she spoke, one director leaned toward another, voice low but sharp enough to slice the quiet. Who exactly is supposed to sit in that chair? The question lingered, unanswered, yet heavy over the room. Anticipation coiled tightly in the hallway. No one could have guessed that the silence beyond the frosted glass belonged to me, and that when I finally stepped through, everything they assumed would shift. Keep watching to see what unfolds when 25 years of quiet endurance collide with corporate arrogance. The air outside the boardroom felt sharper than the air within. I stood still, shoes planted on the marble floor, the silver pen clenched in my fist. Its weight was steady, almost comforting, yet my pulse betrayed me, racing with anticipation. Behind the frosted glass, voices ebbed and flowed. The board was settling, Adrienne Cross's voice cutting through with unrestrained certainty. "Today begins a new chapter for Meridian Corporation," she proclaimed. Even through the glass, I could sense the rhythm, a practiced cadence meant to convey inevitability. We are restructuring from the top down. Dead weight will be removed. Inefficiency will be eliminated. We will no longer be constrained by the past. Her confidence struck sharply, slicing through the walls. Inside, directors nodded, or at least feigned agreement, having quickly learned that Adrienne rewarded visible loyalty. I adjusted my grip on the pen. Theodore had pressed it into my hand days ago, his gaze steady, voice low. "This is more than ink, Cameron. It's a promise," steadied me, yet the tension prickled along my skin like static. Timing was everything. I could not enter too soon. From my vantage, I saw the secretary pacing, shuffling papers with nervous energy. She carried a thick folder, new filings, I assumed. Her eyes darted from the glass to her phone and back to the documents, as though something heavy weighed on her. When Adrienne paused to sip water, the secretary slipped forward, handing over the folder, whispering too loudly. "The ownership filings were updated this morning." Through the frosted glass, I saw Adrienne stiffen for a fraction of a second. Her cadence wavered. Fingers clenched the folder's edge, knuckles whitening for a heartbeat, before she forced her practiced smile back. For a brief instant, the mask cracked, unease flickered, then she snapped the folder closed and regained composure. As I was saying, she continued, voice louder, almost defiant. "Our direction is clear. The new investor is fully aligned with me. Their interests mirror mine. No need for concern." Directors nodded again, yet their eyes betrayed hesitation. Her words had not landed as intended. I exhaled slowly. My moment was near, yet I had to wait. Let her arrogance ascend. Let her feel untouchable. Only then would the descent cut deep enough to be remembered. I tucked the pen into my palm, its cool weight anchoring me. The tension in the air was no longer mine alone. It spilled beneath the doors, coiling around those seated at the table, tightening with each confident word Adrienne spoke. She believed she was in control. She assumed the chair at the end belonged to an ally. She thought the filings were inconsequential. Soon she would learn otherwise. Inside, the hum of agreement grew. Adrienne's voice carried the assurance of someone certain the hardest part was behind her. She paced at the head of the table, gestures measured, as if each director were already hers. "Progress demands boldness," she declared, pointing to the projected slides. "We have already begun trimming excess. With your votes today, it becomes official. Together we write Meridian's future." A few directors leaned back, nodding cautiously but compliantly. One then another voiced agreement. "I think Adrienne is right. We need a clean break from the past. Efficiency is the only way forward." Relief softened Adrienne's features. The tension in her shoulders eased, stride gaining triumph. For the first time that morning she allowed herself a victorious smile. From the hallway, I observed shifting silhouettes through the frosted glass. The rhythm of voices gave me enough. Adrienne had swayed them. My chest tightened. Every passing second felt like sand slipping too quickly through an hourglass. Perhaps I was too late. Perhaps signing those papers, gripping Theodore's silver pen with steady hands, had been merely symbolic. Perhaps the company had already been claimed by Adrienne's arrogance and the board's eagerness to comply. My fingers tightened around the pen in my pocket, its smooth metal pressing into my palm. Doubt weighed on my chest. I imagined the directors raising their hands, Adrienne securing the vote she needed, the legacy I'd protected slipping into her careless hands. Inside, Adrienne leaned forward, voice brimming with self-satisfaction. "Let's proceed," she said, signaling for a show of hands. But before any arm could rise, the secretary burst in, breathless, holding her phone high. "You need to see this," she said, her voice shattering the room's tense calm like glass. Confusion spread across the table. Devices lit up as directors scrambled for their tablets and phones. Adrienne's frown deepened, irritation flashing. Then her expression faltered as she read. On every screen appeared the same message, notification of ownership change. As of Tuesday morning, Cameron Blake holds 42% of voting shares in Meridian Corporation. This update overrides all previous records. Effective immediately, board recognition of ownership is required. The room went silent. Chairs creaked as directors shifted, eyes widening, rereading the words as if disbelief could undo them. Adrienne's earlier confidence vanished instantly, replaced by the rigid stiffness of a woman whose ground had just been pulled away. In the hallway, I exhaled. The heaviness of doubt eased, replaced by a clear, hard resolve. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning. The boardroom silence became almost suffocating as I finally opened the door. The frosted glass swung wide, all heads snapping toward me as my shoes struck the polished floor. I didn't rush. I walked with the calm, steady rhythm of someone who belonged, though no one had anticipated my presence. In my right hand, the silver pen caught the light, glinting like a subtle blade. I let it hang at my side, as though it had always been there. The pen was no longer merely a gift from Theodore. It had become proof that my signature carried more weight than Adrienne Cross's entire morning performance. She froze mid-sentence, eyes widening for a fleeting moment. Her mask cracked, revealing the panic beneath. This is a mistake," she stammered, clutching the folder in front of her. Her voice trembled, stripped of its authoritative cadence, now brittle and uncertain. I said nothing. Not yet. I stood firm, letting the silence amplify my presence. My gaze locked on Adrienne's, steady, unyielding. Around us, the directors shifted uneasily, sensing the storm about to erupt. Adrienne tried again, louder, forcing a veneer of confidence. The SEC filing must be an error. Blake was terminated. He has no authority here. But the quiver in her voice betrayed her. Still, I remained silent, letting the weight of my existence in that room press down, growing heavier with each passing heartbeat. The directors leaned back, some exchanging cautious glances, others averting their eyes. The shifted too, power, palpable even before a word was spoken. Finally, I took a deliberate step forward. The silver pen caught the light again. I didn't brandish it, didn't raise it. I simply held it steady, like a truth no one could dispute. I paused halfway to the empty chair, labeled majority shareholder. I did not sit. Instead, I stood beside it, silent, my gaze fixed unwaveringly on Adrienne. The effect was immediate. Her face paled and her voice collapsed into nervous muttering. She gripped the table as if it could steady her, but the room had already shifted. Every eye was on me now, waiting, not for her, but for what I would do. And still, I waited. I let the silence stretch, unbearable, until even the shuffle of a chair sounded deafening. Anticipation had become a weapon, and I wielded it carefully. In that suspended moment, Adrienne understood the truth. Power isn't found in yelling or grand pronouncements. True power lies in the calm presence of the one who needs no declaration. At last, I lowered myself into the chair at the far end, reserved for the majority shareholder. The leather creaked softly beneath me, yet the sound carried like a verdict through the room. Every eye followed, as though my act of sitting alone declared war. I placed the manila envelope Adrienne had slid across my desk onto the table, edges worn from my grip. Then, calm but cutting, I spoke. I do not accept the decision to terminate my employment. The words were measured, deliberate, each syllable striking harder than any shout. Adrienne lurched forward, color rushing to her face. "This is outrageous," she barked. "He has no authority here. He was terminated under my direction. Your authority?" I interrupted softly, letting the phrase linger like frost. "That authority ends where ownership begins." The room tensed. Directors exchanged glances, torn between old habits and the shifting tide. Adrienne pounded the table, desperate. "The board has no obligation to recognize this. You're undermining everything we've built." Before she could continue, a senior director, quiet until now, leaned back, folding his arms. "For the record," he said, "I vote with Cameron." The effect was instantaneous. Another director nodded, relief barely contained. Then another. The dominoes fell silently as people recognized the storm had passed and the wrong shelter no longer protected them. Adrienne's triumph drained from her face. She scanned the room for allies. None met her gaze. I drew the silver pen from my pocket, its familiar weight glinting under fluorescent light. Slowly, deliberately, I placed it on the table. "This pen," I said softly, "was given to me by Theodore Hartwell when I signed the documents transferring ownership. It stands for trust, continuity, and the founder's will, which does not vanish because one woman labels me old infrastructure." I leaned forward, sliding a document across the table. I signed my name, the pen scratching against paper like the closing of a circle. The sound was subtle, yet louder than any gavel in that room. For the first time in days, the weight on my chest lifted. Liberation came not through shouting or revenge, but through the quiet satisfaction of balance restored. I had not only defended myself, I had claimed what was mine. Adrienne sank into her chair, defeated. The board no longer looked at her. Their eyes were on me. The room held its breath as I finished signing. The silver pen rested in my hand for a moment before I set it down with finality. Then I looked at Adrienne, pale and cornered. From this moment forward, I said evenly, "You will report directly to me." A ripple spread through the room. Some directors straightened. Others exchanged relieved glances. The tension that had weighed on the room for days finally broke. One director exhaled so loudly it nearly sounded like laughter. Another began clapping, followed by a hesitant handful, then a firmer chorus. The applause echoed, not thunderous, but enough to mark the restoration of justice. Adrienne's jaw tightened, yet she made no protest. The silence around her confirmed her defeat. I picked up the silver pen once more, letting the light glint across its engraved surface. A small smile curved my lips. "This company doesn't need showmen," I said quietly, letting the words linger. "It needs guardians." The board nodded, understanding sinking in. For them, it was closure. For me, it was triumph, steady, undeniable, and just. Gathering my papers, I slid the pen back into my pocket where it belonged. Liberation wasn't about erasing the past. It was proving that sacrifice mattered, loyalty endured, and integrity outlasted arrogance. For the first time in years, I left a boardroom not as an employee, not as a scapegoat, but as the rightful steward of what I had built. And the look on Adrienne's face, hollow recognition of defeat, was more satisfying than any speech. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. It arrives quietly, with steady hands and unwavering resolve. If you enjoyed this story about never underestimating someone and how patience can become the strongest weapon, hit that like button and leave a comment. And if you haven't yet, subscribe and ring the bell for more stories like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.